Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Welcome, everyone, and sincere apologies to everyone who isn't here. Because the people who are here know that it's the third Thursday of the month, and so we have our regular monthly meetings at 7 o'clock here. But I guess I sent out the notice, but not to everyone, I guess to a select group. I know I sent it to staff, and I think I was probably, anyways, in my mind, I thought like 2 weeks ago, I had sent out the notice and the Zoom link, but I hadn't, and no one told me until this afternoon. There was an email in my email box, and I ended up getting the message just about an hour ago. I found out I hadn't sent it out. So also apologies to Randal that our attendance is maybe a little lower because I hadn't sent out the notice, although this is our regular night. And we do have a good crowd on Zoom. So welcome to everyone on Zoom. So let's get started. Oh yeah, and it was on the website and it was on Facebook and things like that. So, yeah. As always, our meeting is being recorded, and we'll just get started. Whoops. And like all computers, you have to tell it where you are before it does anything. Okay, so we'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the traditional territories of the Nanaimo and Stoneynaws First Nations. So we're very lucky to be here and appreciative of the beautiful place that we live. And our mission statement, as always, is to foster an interest, appreciation, and enjoyment of nature and promote the conservation of healthy natural ecosystems in the Nanaimo region. Every time I say that, I feel like I'm watching the introduction to Star Trek or something. It's just like brings back these memories. But it is true, and we have a presence online. We have a website, an Instagram account, a Facebook account, a YouTube channel, and now that's the proper email that we're trying to use now, info@naturenanaimo.ca. Some upcoming events. We're going to be going to the Shaw Center for the Salish Sea on October 26th, which is just a week from Sunday. We're going to go across on the Mill Bay Ferry to Brentwood Bay and get up to the peninsula that way. Partly because it's fun to take the ferry, but also legally now, like as of October 1st, you're not allowed to go over the Malahat unless you have snow tires or sort of like the tires with the right little code on them. So in nature Nanaimo, like, if it's a beautiful sunny day, then you'd probably be okay and they don't stop you, but we're just going to arrange carpooling via the ferry. Going there and back. So that'll be fun. And just something that I occurred to me when I was doing research about this facility, it's called the Shaw Center for the Salish Sea. And in my mind, I thought, oh, when you go there, you're supporting Shaw Rogers, this big corporation, but it's not. They just call it the Shaw Center because Shaw donated some money to them. So it's a nonprofit organization. And so it's kind of a misleading name. It should be called like the People's Center for the Salish Sea, supported by such companies as Shaw, But anyway, that'll be fun. And one of the reasons we're going, it's a great place, but our own Linda Stevens, who is not, she's on Zoom tonight in there somewhere. She's, as you know, she's an amazing photographer and a longtime member of Nature Nanaimo. But the center also has like a wild plants and native pollinators exhibit on, and she is one of the people whose many photographs, excellent photographs, are part of the featured exhibit. So it's ongoing now. So we're going to go down there. She's going to be the outings leader. So she can describe how she took those photos. But so we're going to go down with her and see her exhibit. And I've never been to that aquarium. I don't know how many people have, but they have a big marine aquarium inside. So it's quite nice. Then in mid-November, the 14th of November, a Friday, we're going to go out to Morel looking for mushrooms with Bob Harvey, another longtime Morel person, of course, but also a Nature Nanaimo member. And as Lance would attest, I don't know if anyone knows Morel better than Bob Harvey, but he probably knows where every single mushroom is. So if you don't see one, it's because he's chosen not to show it to you because he knows them all. But anyways, that'll be fun. And so that's coming up. And I sent out the forms for people to register and sign up for those things. The Outings Committee is doing that now, and we've been really happy with how that's worked. So people just sign up, answer a little question about, whether or not they want a carpool and those kinds of things. And it's really easy for the Outings Committee to know approximately how many people are coming and that sort of thing. The Nature Nanaimo AGM, it's delayed a week, is that right? So it is a Thursday night, but it's the fourth Thursday of November, not the third, because of conflict with the room. So we can't get that on in November. So that's an important meeting. And the presenter is?
We believe it's going to be someone from the British Columbia Conservation Federation. We just have to firm it up. They'll be talking about the state of Nanaimo River.
Okay, so it's for the people on Zoom, if you didn't hear that, our November guest speaker is tentatively going to be talking from BC
Conservation
Federation, talking about the status of the Nanaimo River. So it should be really good. And our AGM is always relatively painless, so you don't have to worry about having to sit through a long AGM. And we will be announcing more outings, exciting outings coming up. In early December, the date hasn't been chosen yet, but it will be early December. We're going to have a really fun outing called Festive Foraging, and we're going to go out and try and, gather some greenery, including maybe some, invasive holly berries, which are really, really nice for Christmas wreaths, even though they're invasive. So it's good to cut them and nice to put them in wreaths. But we're going to have someone from Parksville. We're going to sort of do a little bit of gather some greenery and then make some wreaths, some Christmas decorations. So it'll be kind of like a little workshopy thing. There might be a small fee just to buy the ring, the metal ring, and that kind of stuff. But that should be fun. Once we have the dates and details finalized, we'll send out a sign-up sheet for that. And then we will have a Christmas party coming up in early December, as we always do. Details, I'm sure, will be forthcoming at the next meeting about that. And then in in December, January, we're going to try and get over to Brackendale again to see the eagles up near Squamish. Brackendale is like part of Squamish, or in Squamish, next to Squamish. Beautiful location. We were there a number of years ago. Oh, and I should just mention, but I couldn't find my photograph straight away, but recently we went to the Quinsam River Hatchery. It was a great outing. I think there was 19 people, led by Judy, and it was fantastic. We found out it's the biggest hatchery in Canada. Who knew? And we saw a lot of salmon, like hundreds and hundreds of salmon in the river. And I missed the bear, but there was a black bear also feeding on the salmon for a while that some people got to see. And then we went, I didn't get a chance to go, but we went to Sasquatch Island just a couple weeks ago, maybe. It wasn't long ago, and had a lovely day over on Sasquatch, and and saw, I mean, lots of wonderful things, but I don't have photographs of them, unfortunately, but we did have two good outings. Yeah. And maybe you could send me the photos again. I tried to find them. We are going to send out very soon, like probably within the next few days, certainly within the next week. We want to update our kind of our information on who would be willing to volunteer for what activities within Nature Nanaimo. And we ask that when people fill in their membership forms, but then from year to year, that gets kind of stale. And so we have, like 4 years ago, Wendy said she might be willing to do this, and maybe she isn't anymore. She might want to do something else. So we're going to update that, and using, and St. John sort of the key here in terms of guiding us through Google Drive, but going to take advantage of Google Forms. We're going to send out a questionnaire with sort of details of all the different activities that you may just, just stick your name on there if you think you might be able to help out. So some of the things that we do need help with that you'll be asked about will be things like the monthly meetings. So Stefan has taken the brunt of this, just, finding topics and presenters for years and years and years. And it's fun if you know someone, that you think, could give a really good talk, that would be great. We just need people to come in and help physically set up the chairs. That's something that it would just be nice for us to know that there's a few volunteers that are willing to do that. And then the tech setup is a bit finicky, but the key there is that if something happens to me, someone needs to be able to set it up. And so we just need people who are willing to say, yeah, I can help out with the technical setup, and in a pinch, I can set it up and run the meeting kind of thing. So we do have a month.
February, he will be in Africa, so we need someone by then.
For sure, yeah. So there's some incentive. There's no free pizza or anything that I've ever gotten, but anyways, beer tickets or Tim Hortons or something, I don't know. But anyways, so that's and I guess I should say that we want to do this sort of as committees, like when we were young, early in our organizational development there, we sort of had the board was sort of doing all these things. But it's not really a board job, because then you go to a board meeting and you have to listen to all the things the board is talking about, and all you want to do is like help set up chairs or something. You don't want to hear about board stuff. So committees are better at actually getting things done. And then the board, we just get together and we rubber stamp them and we say, yes, report from the outings committee is wonderful, that kind of thing. Social media committee. We've had people who have worked really hard on the web page and Facebook and Instagram, all that stuff. But it would be nice if people who had some familiarity with that would just help out with that and keep it kind of up to date and that sort of thing. So we will have a social media committee. A fundraising committee we've never had, but that would be, in my view, a fun committee, because you just get together over coffee and say, what fun activity could we do to raise a few bucks for Nature Nanaimo? And there's lots of fun things we could do, but we just have never sort of gotten around to doing that formally as a committee. We've had a few fundraising things, but a butter tubs committee, as you know, Nature Nanaimo was pretty involved with butter tubs. Both we run interpretive programs in the summer. We do invasive species removal several times a year, usually in the spring, when the broom is in bloom. But we need people to just kind of help out and sort of be advocates for butter tubs and liaise with the Nature Trust of BC, with Ducks Unlimited, and with the city, because they're they're the owners of the land. Social committee, and some of these committees, like we have an active social committee. I don't know if they need new members, but they would welcome new members because they're a social committee, and they organize the summer picnic and the Christmas party and things like that. So if you're interested in just doing that, it would be fun. The project committee, in a sense, is more, it's like an ad hoc committee. When we just did, for instance, we made
In Butterbuns.
we made the Western Purple Martin nest boxes. So that's like a project. So we just need people, when you have a project that's brought to Nature Nanaimo, you need a working group, or you could call it a committee, whatever, to take on a particular project. So those committees or groups are really just associated with a specific project, and however long that project lasts, that group stays together, and then they're sort of disbanded, I guess, right? You guys still don't meet over at a pub and talk about the nest boxes that you built last year, right? So, yep.
Where would you put the thing we did at Buttertops?
Oh, well, yeah, that would be, that's more like, even like an event. And so that would be more, probably not a committee request, but as an example, Helena and I and Julie and
Daisy.
no, and who else was there? Helen Yeah,
Yes.
there was a group, the Stewardship Council of BC or whatever, who said, we're doing an event at Butter Tubs, and would Nature Nanaimo like to help us out with doing some bird watching for our participants? And so we just sent out oh, sorry, and Chris, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Chris and Helen and I were there, and it was awesome. And we just said, sure. So we just sent out an email saying, would anyone like to help? So it was sort of like an event as opposed to a project or a committee, but it went really, really well. But if you're interested in doing those things, then, putting your name up would be good. And so these are some committees that we already have that are filled, that are working well. They will be mentioned in this survey, and you could say I'm interested, but I will also let you know that there's not an urgent need for those committees right now, but we have an awards committee that looks at, Nature Nanaimo now has an annual award that we give out to a young aspiring student in secondary school who's doing some good environmental thing. And then we give them an award. And so it's fun. It's a feel-good committee. You read the applications and you decide who's worthy of the Nature Nanaimo Award. And they're all doing good stuff. We have an outings committee now that is working really, really well. If you're interested in helping out with outings, then you can join our committee. I think there's 5 of us now, St. and it's going quite well. And it's an example of how a committee is so beneficial, because it's really allowed us to do more stuff. And we have a Nanaimo Magazine committee that is working really well. And again, I don't know if you need new members now because things are going along well, but if you're interested in joining, then certainly you can put your name forward. But those are the types of groups that we have already that are doing good things on behalf of Nature Nanaimo. And then, of course, there is the board of directors, which there's always going to be every year, like a little turnover and a need for new board members. So, for example, if you're interested in being a treasurer, we have a treasurer, but Sinjin would like to phase out and maybe be a treasurer for this coming year, but maybe tutor someone on, taking over the reins so that as of November 2026, we have a new treasurer. So if you're interested in playing a role on the board, then there will be those opportunities as well. But so it's kind of like Gary's going to be the president this coming year. So we don't need a president this coming year, but if it's something you'd consider doing, then we'll be asking you to put your little check mark on willing to be on the board. And those are the board positions. We have president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, membership director, Sally, and then directors at large, and they just wear different hats and help out in different ways. Membership renewal. This is the end of October. It's your last chance to get the deep discount, $5 off if you renew before the end of October, right, Sally? And so it's membership renewal time. And then our board of directors AGM is next meeting. So if you check off on this form, or if you want to nominate someone for a position on the board, then that's also, of course, coming up very soon. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our guest speaker, Randal, who's going to talk about a damp subject tonight, right? I just have to get his PowerPoint up. Oh, and we do have. You'd prefer this?
Can the people online hear me through that?
Yeah.
I have a very loud speaking voice.
Okay, but well, okay.
We'll try it.
Okay.
We'll try it.
Okay, now this is the hardest part.
Close. There we go.
Okay, and I have to stop sharing. And can the people on Zoom, see that shared slide? I hope so.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. And can you see Randall there?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and does this work here?
Oh, and then this,
click?
yeah, that should, once I
Okay.
click on this, that should
Okay, great.
forward.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. Thanks for coming out on Thursday night. I realize summer is over today. It's very cold out there. But you're gonna warm your heart with the beautiful plants you're gonna see tonight. From places that are just spectacular. And if you haven't been to them already, I hope you'll want to go to them by the end of tonight's talk. So I'm going to be talking about really wet places, and it's getting close to Halloween, right? The way I got into really wet places is I'm interested in tiny little plants. I've always been interested in tiny little plants, and when you go somewhere and everything's different and just good. It's sort of like going to someone's house at Halloween and they give you 3 full-size chocolate bars. It turns out that there are botanical equivalents to these houses in the natural world. For some people, it might be the forest, the tropical rainforest for orchids. But for someone like me who loves tiny little plants, it turns out that it's the water-scorched hellscapes of northern Vancouver Island. The reason I use the term exceedingly wet is my daughter used to get a big kick out of this British comedian who had this little thing about, oh, when you eat a cake, you always have to say how moist it is. And have you guys seen this? And then the punchline is, this cake is the dampest cake I've ever eaten, right? So I always think about that when I'm in these wet places. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to first outline where these exceedingly wet places are. Then we're going to look at what plants thrive there and why do these plants thrive. So let's start with the most common. Everyone can hear me well? All right. Okay. So we're going to start with the most common of them. So our first exceedingly wet place, I'm showing you a mean annual precipitation map of British Columbia, and the deepest blue colors represent the highest precipitation. And not surprisingly, these are almost all along the open coasts of British Columbia. Pop quiz, where is the wettest place in North America?
Henderson Lake.
That's right. And how much moisture does Henderson Lake take in on a really wet year?
6,000.
Record is almost 8,000 millimeters.
Where is that?
So Henderson Lake has a new name that I sadly have not taught myself how to pronounce yet. But Henderson Lake is just southwest of Port Alberni. It's
Inlet, Alberni Inlet.
yeah. So you've worked there. Yeah.
I used to do a salmon run in there.
Oh my goodness, you lucky man. You probably didn't feel lucky when you were working there. Yeah.
I sent for an article.
Okay. So when we see these deep blues, we're talking about precipitation that's typically above 3,000 or 3,500 millimeters per year, but upwards of 8,000. When we look at the very wettest places, there are places like northwestern Vancouver Island, the Central Coast, and Haida Gwaii. But even within these wet places, we have a bit of a sort of a Goldilocks zone. There's lots of precipitation in montane regions, but it freezes up. No good for my plants that love really wet habitats. So sort of low to mid-montane, coast-facing, or at the head of exceedingly long inlets, which we see all the way up the Central Coast, and in some places even down above Powell River, above Cortez Island, there's these deep, deep inlets that create very moist microclimates. We call these broadly, these are all in the coastal western hemlock zone, but we call them broadly the moist maritime or hypermaritime zones. So what do these look like? Well, they're far more exciting than a western hemlock. So our first one, this is Mount St. Patrick on Cape Scott, and you're looking over what I like to call the bonsai forest. Have you guys seen this bonsai forest? So when you get to really watery, wind-ripped habitats on the west coast of Vancouver Island, there appears this dwarf conifer forest. And the conifers, there's a few that make it to 10 feet tall, but for the most part, they're around this tall. I first heard about this from a guy who actually collects his own bonsais up there. Yeah, and he said it was the best place to collect bonsais. And I thought, that sounds like a good place for small plants. So this is sort of what we're looking at writ large. This is the Nowitty Plateau on northern Vancouver Island. This is where the giant wind farm is. Have any of you been up there? A spectacular area, surreal with the windmills, but this is the blanket bog, a continuous layer of peat stretching about 10, 15, 20 kilometers in all directions that seems to harbor all of the interesting endemic plants of Haida Gwaii right at the tip of Vancouver Island. So for those of you like me who can't logistically get themselves up to Haida Gwaii, it's an easy way to get there. Okay, so wet coastal places. In these wet coastal places, it's so wet that you get what's called the bog slope. There's so much water falling over the course of the year that slopes are covered in peat mosses that hold the water. That's how they survive. They anchor themselves and hold the water. So we get this bog slope. And this bog slope turns out to be one of the richest botanical habitats on Vancouver Island. So what else is what constitutes a wet place? This is my sort of, those rare moments when you feel really alive in this world. Like after you almost get hit by a car or, I don't know, someone tells you that you're really good at finding small fungi. For me, going to waterfalls, I always feel very alive. There's that cold air, there's that rushing sound, and more importantly, there's all of these crevices and nooks around the rocks that are incredibly rich in tiny little plants. Now, it can't just be any waterfall. This afternoon, I went down to Ammonite Falls. Beautiful canyon you guys have there. Wow, I had never been in there. We have a lot of things like that up in Courtenay. We have that along the Solom River, the Sable River, the Browns River, the Puntledge River. But all of these, most of the waterfalls in those areas, they turn into little tinkles in the summer. In order for them to be constantly wet, they need to have water supplied to them all year round. So they need to be the outlet of a catchment of a large drainage basin that preferably has some glaciers up there or a constant source of meltwater. So here's my human for scale. That's Naka Creek Falls on the northeast coast of Vancouver Island. This is Extu Falls in the Skeena region. But these types of waterfalls, they can be in the middle of the Okanagan. They can be on the South Island. They provide the same moist microhabitat that these tiny plants thrive in. Constant moisture, constant. So here's my example from X2 Falls, which I'm very excited about right now. This is not on Vancouver Island, but the falls is down here along feeding into the X2 River, which feeds into the Stikine River. But if you look at the catchment, it's going up into glaciers. And what that tells you is that it's going to have water all year round. The water that's spraying and dripping and splashing is going to be shared by all the tiny plants that live around it. So there's a lot to choose from. In BC, there's about 800 documented waterfalls, which is surely an underestimate because you can only imagine what's going on up in those mountains. But again, if they freeze up or if they dry out, they're not useful to my tiny little plants. If you know of deep canyon waterfalls on the South Island, please tell me of them because I'm trying to find as many as I can right now. But you can see on Vancouver Island, there's an inordinate number of waterfalls, most of them concentrated around the Strathcona Park region, the spine of the island, if you will. So the last exceedingly wet place I use as an example, a terrain map. This is the Browns River in Courtenay. And I live in the Comox Valley, and this is a river I visit all the time. And for the most part, it's a lovely river, great, but there's certain spots on the Browns River where it becomes about a 50-meter deep slot canyon. And what that means is that the moisture is trapped down there. And when you get in there, suddenly there's a blossoming of plants that occur nowhere else nearby. So it provides moist microhabitat at low elevation. It's going to be moist all year. It's sheltered from devastating sunlight. And it has all these bedrock cracks, ledges, in a whole bunch of orientations, northeast, southwest, 20 degrees, 90 degrees, that make for great habitat for tiny plants. So the textbook example of this is on the North Shore in Vancouver. This is Lynn Canyon. How many of you have visited Lynn Canyon? Beautiful spot, right? Very hard to get down to the bottom of it at times, and all sorts of memorial crosses to make you second guess your own judgment. But if you can get down there, these ledges all around the bottom of the canyon are loaded with tiny plants that in some cases are known nowhere else in Canada. And my hypothesis would be that those same plants should occur in all sorts of other canyons across Western British Columbia. So let's get started with non-plants before we move into the good stuff. How many of you guys know this lichen? Right? Where do you see it? Old growth forest, and like, where do you think of seeing it the most? On the coast, right? In that sort of marine layer area of the west coast of the island, but it's also in river canyons. It's on the water, even along the east coast of the island in places. But it's a fantastic indicator of moist microhabitat. It seems to, something about lichens is that they actually don't do well in extreme wetness. Their physiology, the ability of the algae to photosynthesize is limited by total saturation. So they need ventilation. So this giant body plan, you can see my friend Dan here holding a chunk of it that's about 8 feet long, is perhaps a way to increase that ventilation so that after the rain, the thallus can lose some of its moisture and the algae can photosynthesize again. This is Methuselah's beard. Yes. Yeah, this is, we're getting to old man's beard taxonomy and it's complicated. It's complicated. So let us move on to our next ultra wet lichen. This is the other extreme, fully submersible. You can see the sheen of the water's surface on it. This is, I think it's called the water fingers lichen, Scyphula ceratides. In the bog slope, in that scorched hellscape of northern Vancouver Island, this is the dominant lichen all over the ground. You feel like you're stomping on little children's fingers everywhere you go. But it seems to thrive in these seasonally immersed environments, which is curious. There must be something about the anatomy or structure of the fungal partner that protects the algal partner from oversaturation. Now, is there anything more interesting than lichens? Sorry, we had Fungus Fest in the Comox Valley last week in Cumberland, and it was crazy. I led 2 lichen walks, and there was 25 people on each lichen walk. And I've never seen people so enthusiastic about fungi in my life. And that was on the lichen walk. Like, what were they doing when Andy McKinnon was showing them all the mushrooms? They were probably fainting. Oh, yeah. My mother always talks about seeing the Beatles in 1960, whatever. And how people would faint, and it was, when they were on Ed Sullivan, it was crazy. I feel like those fungus people with Andy McKinnon would have been losing it. Would have been losing it. This is what makes me lose it. This lichen right here. This is from an ultra moist forest. This is Dendriscosticta aura borealis. Now, what you're seeing, not that impressive, just fuzz and some green thing. But what you're actually seeing, this is quite exciting. Lichens are named based on the fungus. The fungus is a partner in the lichen, but it's the basis of the taxonomy of lichens. At this moisture level, at this exact point, the algal partner switches from a true algae to a cyanobacteria. Same fungus, different partner. Ergo, same lichen. But you can see how the form is completely different because it's a community and the response of the fungus to the partner is dramatically different. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So these are just lichens. They're but lichens. Now, how about a lichen that's really accessible? Something you can see in the next year. Something you could conceivably bike to. Sort of. This is what my friend John calls buno buno buno. In the race for most syllables in a name, this is giving a good challenge. Bunodoforum melanocarpum. Now, it kind of looks like that coral lichen that you see on conifer trees around here. Completely unrelated. But this lichen, you see it as an epiphyte on conifers on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And the moment you see it, you're in the zone. This more so than Usnea longissima. If you see this, you're in the wet zone. And anything can happen. You've reached total saturation. So it's a cosmopolitan thing. It's all around the world. The only thing limiting its distribution is moisture. So we think of, things in British Columbia, cosmopolitan things are found all around the Northern Hemisphere. This one, British Columbia, coastal, moist, Amazonian cloud forests. It doesn't care about temperature. It cares about moisture. And it cares about moisture all over the world, whether it's in Africa, New Zealand, Japan, or South America. It's an epiphyte of exceedingly moist forests around the world.
Okay, yes, hello.
Yes, yes. Now, yes, yes, especially on the North Coast. We're going to see this pattern of UK and British Columbia a lot. So let's start with green things, because we got to work our way up to real plants. Right? We've talked about the algae in the lichen. That was exciting. Now we're going to talk about the algae in the sponges. So in these ultra wet places, there's creeks everywhere. The creeks are absolutely loaded with this terrestrial freshwater sponge, Spongilla, which you can see all around Nanaimo. You'll see it in sort of fallow lakes and ponds around Nanaimo. Once you get a little deeper, usually, but up on the north coast of Vancouver Island, it lines the creeks. The green, of course, coming from the algal partner. More weird green things in the streams. Sure, it's algal scum, but it's a special algal scum. It's a red algae. How many terrestrial red algae do you guys know? Right? Those things should be in the ocean. But in this weird, completely flush microhabitat, we have a terrestrial red algae known all over the northern hemisphere in extremely wet places, Kumanoa. And it's not only terrestrial, look at it. It looks like a whole plant, right? No, it's completely colonial. Unicellular. In a colony, right? You can split this thing up, it'll rearrange. Yeah. Thematic unity, right? We have a sponge, another organism you can pass through a sieve for it to rearrange. And we have a red algae that does the same thing. Very resilient creatures. But let's get to real plants. I know you were expecting orchids. I tricked you all. I use euphemisms. So this is our first exciting exotic plant that is all over these moist microhabitats, whether they're in waterfall splash zones, deep canyons, or the hypermaritime forests of the West Coast. What do you see? You see this thin film of photosynthetic tissue. This is a fern. Very disappointing fern, right? You need a reason to care about this. So let me try and give you a reason. This is a fern called Hymenophyllum rhytii. It's part of the filmy fern group. So first, I need to do this. I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to do this anymore. Right? You've earned the right at this point in your life never to have to look over a plant life cycle again. Or at least you thought. But the only reason I'm putting this up for two reasons. Reason number one, everything we think of as a fern is part of the diploid generation, the sporophyte, if you will, the spore-bearing phase. But happening once those spores germinate is this very cryptic, filmy, one-cell thick phase called the gametophyte that only has one set of chromosomes. It's haploid. Now, almost all ferns in British Columbia present as a sporophyte, and if you're lucky, you'll notice the gametophyte now and then on ditch banks, turned up trees and the like. But this one is almost exclusively known as a gametophyte. In fact, all around the Pacific, it is known as a persistent gametophyte. It can live for years and years in this tiny little filamentous one cell thick stage without ever developing the proper leaves. I know. You want to see what it looks like when it does have leaves. You're going to have to wait. Because that would be instant gratification. And last night, I was trying to find a fern life cycle. And I caught my daughter using AI for one of her homework assignments. And I was trying to say, like, man, this is not good. Like, the moment you know about something, you'll see that it doesn't work well for a lot of things. And to demonstrate it to her, I asked AI to draw me a fern life cycle. And this looks really impressive, right? Do you like the style and everything? But it's a horror show. Okay, this, little did we know, that's an archegonium. Wrong. This is a saurus. Wrong. This is something called a sporanphyte. Wrong. This is the spores, apparently. Wrong. Look, it's the spires. Wrong. Look, fertilization of the archevidia. Wrong. The zygote is apparently sperm, which is apparently a young sporophyte. Wrong. My daughter did not appreciate this lesson. But as boring as this might look, it explains this plant, because where it does occur as a sporophyte, oh my gosh, look at it. If we had ferns like this in BC, everyone would be out there looking for them. I've got news for you. We do. We just have only ever seen it as a sporophyte in one population on Haida Gwaii. So it's in literally hundreds of locations all up and down the West Coast, hidden in little tree crevices, in moss cushions, in rock canyons. And something triggers it to develop like this. But whatever that something is missing almost everywhere in British Columbia. You can see its distribution, very prominent in East Asia, a little bit in the Himalayan region, and all over the West Coast. But on the West Coast, not so beautiful as this one. Instead, we get that guy. I know. But if you have a vivid imagination, it's amazing. But I guess so is everything else in life. Okay. So let's move to the thing I really tricked you into coming for. I will mention flowering plants in passing as a less than impressive component of these saturated environments. But in order to get there, I need to focus on the plants that dominate. And the most dominant plant in these exceedingly wet habitats are members of the genus Sphagnum. Now, have you guys been to the Yellow Point Bog? Any other local Sphagnum habitats, right? There we go. So Hamilton Marsh, you said? Okay. Okay. Wow, you get all the good postings. So sphagnum is an interesting plant. My first recognition of sphagnum was as a kid. There used to be advertisements for female hygiene products that said it has sphagnum in it. And I thought, what's sphagnum and what is this product? And I learned many years later that sphagnum has this incredible ability to absorb moisture. It was used as wound dressing in the World Wars. It was traditionally used as bedding material for local First Nations. But it is also an incredible terraformer. It takes bare, wet land that is too unstable for anything to live in, and starting at the margins where the water gathers, it starts to absorb that water and encroach on the water bodies until it fills the entire basin. And in doing so, it's holding all this water, but more importantly, it ends up creating this very acidic, low oxygen habitat that is very hostile for life. It's hard to live where there's no oxygen. It's hard to live where the pH is about 4. I've never tried to do it myself, but it doesn't sound very pleasant. These conditions make nutrient cycling very challenging. And as a consequence, the plants that live in these habitats, they have to find other ways to acquire their nutrients. The old roots in the soil thing doesn't work. There's not really soil, and where they can establish, it's extremely acidic, and there's not a lot of nutrient cycling. So there's about 20 species of sphagnum on the North Island. And there can be about 20 species within about 500 meters of each other. Very diverse group on the North Island. So you can see this from space. This is a satellite photo. You'd see the same thing at the Newity Plateau on northern Vancouver Island. This is just north of Bella Bella on the central coast. Everything brown is sphagnum. There's a 1 kilometer scale bar for reference, but we're talking about tens of kilometers of bogscape. The sphagnum is controlling the habitat. And it's doing it very beautifully. All manner of colors and leaf arrangements, capsules that the spores are dispersed out of, reds, yellows, browns, greens. But they thrive there because they hold an incredible amount of water. They can tolerate 5,000 millimeters of precipitation every year. In fact, they see it as an opportunity. So other things are not so, how do you say, exotic. Do you guys like to hike around bluffs? If you don't, you should, quit Nature Nanaimo. That's got to be like something to be a member. You must love bluffs, I assume. But if the rock balls all around Nanaimo, I was just up on White River Road today around Extension. Does that make sense? And along the Nanaimo River bluffs, you'll see this moss, and it's like a hot moss. It's on south-facing, sun-scorched bluffs. In these water-dominated habitats, these saturated habitats, it's an epiphyte, and it forms hummocks. So it'll form pillows this big. Why? I have no idea. None. My PhD supervisor's husband always used to, when he was exasperated, he'd say, "Plants do what they want." That's a good way of saying it, right? But this is an incredibly cosmopolitan species all over the Northern Hemisphere. You can see it goes all the way down to California, Spain, Greenland, but it seems to become more abundant by biomass as you move north. Other plants are very rare up there. So this is, I know. Hold in your oohing and awing. I can hardly hear myself think. But this is a moss called Iwatsukiella leucotricha. And you can see it's growing on the branches of one of these bonsai trees, if you will. This is a hemlock. But this thing, in addition to liking around 5,000 millimeters of precipitation every year, it also likes winds of about 100 to 150 kilometers an hour. What do you make of that? So there's something structurally, there's some sort of structural adaptation in this plant that can tolerate extremely high winds. It lives where no one else wants to. It can't compete otherwise. And that's sort of a story you see with a lot of these tiny plants up there. So here again, Iwatsukiella, all up and down the west coast of North America, but high wind, high moisture environments. So open coast usually, and then found all across Asia, but again in these high wind, high moisture microhabitats. Which brings us to Takakia. Have you ever heard these words? No. No. I've been hanging out with the wrong people. I need to hang out with well-adjusted people like you. In my peer group, we talk about Takakia like it was a really hot car we saw driving down Jingle Pop, you know, it's I once saw Takakia on a ditch. Whoa. But Takakia, this is Takakia lepidozioides, pardon me. This is a tiny plant. This is about 1 centimeter tall. Looks like a miniature horsetail. Is that fair to say? Its entire body is covered in a mucilaginous slime colonized by nitrogen fixing bacteria. Interesting. All bryophytes take their nutrients in through their leaf surface. They don't root. Their water comes in through the leaves, their nutrients come in through the leaves. Many of them have little pockets all over the place for these microorganisms to live and generate nutrients that they'll ultimately use. This is considered the oldest land plant based on molecular clock dating. So it diverged from all other land plants about 400 million years ago. And my background is in paleobotany. The earliest land plants we see in the fossil record kind of look like this. Tiny little things in the Rhynie chert of Scotland with little whorls of hardly leaf-looking organs surrounding the stem on the margins of ponds and lakes. The Japanese word for this plant translates into the impossible moss. And it's the reason they called it the impossible moss is it has a suite of characters not seen in any other moss. It bears naked archegonia and antheridia, no special surrounding tissues or surrounding structures. They're naked and open to the environment. It has oil bodies like a liverwort. It has branched leaves like a liverwort. It wasn't until I think the 70s or maybe the early 90s that they saw that when it did have a fruiting body, if you will, it was that of a moss. Look at that distribution. West coast of North America. This is down to sort of the lower mainland area down here. The Himalayas, Japan, Taiwan. Weird distribution pattern. What does it need? Constant moisture and humidity. It's found on creek banks, in these high precipitation environments. It's found in deep canyons, and it's found in waterfall splash zones on rock ledges. If you would like to see it, you can see it here on Vancouver Island. Closest place is on the way to Tassos. The caves, Upana Caves. So there's a number of endemic liverworts in these moist, in these saturated habitats. So this is Macrodiplophilum rubrum. You'll see this all around the Bamfield and Port Renfrew area. Around the base of cedar trees, it has this zipper-like set of teeth down the stem on the edges of the leaves. It's huge. We're talking 4 centimeters? I mean, this thing is a mammoth, but it's endemic to the Pacific Northwest, as is its brother, Macrodiplophilum rubrum, flaccidum, pardon me, which you will see on almost every waterfall on Vancouver Island. Look for this. It's always in the spray zone, and oftentimes in the areas where the water sort of bends backwards behind the waterfall. The technical term, and it's really not a good term, is grotto, a waterfall grotto. Not the most evocative term. And then to complete the suite, this is another regional endemic. This is Macrodiplophilum plicatum. This one only occurs under bushes at about 400 to 600 meters in hypermaritime forests. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, when will this fun stop? You guys aren't gonna believe this. I'm about to show you another tiny plant with tiny leaves. So this is a liverwort, and there's a reason I'm starting to show these to you. This is Anastrepta orchidensis, the Orkney notchwort. You can see it has these characteristic red balls at the top and sort of erect shoots. This is also under bushes, starting from sea level to around 600 meters under Vaccinium. But this is one of a suite of liverworts that forms what's called the Northern Hepatic Map. This is a community of liverworts that is found in Scotland, Ireland, Finland, Sweden, and the Himalayas. Bizarre. And now it is found on northern Vancouver Island. Previously only known from Haida Gwaii, now northern Vancouver Island. Here's another member of it, Radula obtusaloba, beautiful pinnate liverwort. This one is huge. We're talking 2 centimeters across, up to 4 or 5 centimeters long. And you will see it again, waterfall splash zones, deep canyons, and very moist, foggy coastal forests. Okay, are you ready? We're almost at flowering plants. We're so close. Okay. This is called purple gummy worms. Clerosia purpurea. But there's something special about this one. One, it's in the bogscape on northern Vancouver Island. But more importantly, it's a carnivorous plant. Oh my goodness. What's the tie-in? Well, when we look at our bog slope flowering plants in these exceedingly wet habitats, there seems to be a uniting feature. You know, some things are just kind of fun to see, right? Like Cicericium, but other things, they are all finding their way to nutrients in creative ways. So this is what I call Tophildii, but is now called Triantha glutinosa. Yes?
Take your word for it.
A carnivorous plant. Uses enzymes to digest little gnats. How about this one? Pinguicula, L. butterwort, right? The butterwort, another carnivorous plant. Sundew, carnivorous plant. I've put up a couple orchids to make you feel like you saw something beautiful. I know you've already seen many beautiful things, right? Yes. Okay, so there are a lot of orchids up there. A fellow from Victoria named Justin Dunning was asking me for access advice a while ago because he's an orchid fiend. And he went up there and he found 12 different species of orchids in the bog up there. And some of them were first records for the island. So this is Hammerbia. It's a north coastal thing, previously only known from Haida Gwaii and Price Island, and all over the north, but extended down into the bogscape on northern Vancouver Island. Spiranthes. How do orchids get their nutrients? So they're hemiparasites, saprophytes. They generally negotiate relationships through fungus with the roots of members of the blueberry family, Ericaceae. So this is lingonberry in honor of our Swedish member here. As our representative of the blueberry family, the plants up, the flowering plants up in the Newiddy have creative ways for attaining their nutrients. In the case of Ericaceae, they have incredible tolerance of acidic environments, and they form mycorrhizal associations with conifers. In the case of orchids, they form mycorrhizal associations or fungal associations with Ericaceae. And then we have our carnivorous plants, which are getting their nutrients, limiting nutrients, by digesting small invertebrates, just like this liverwort, the first known bryophyte to get its nutrients from invertebrates.
Can you give me a scale on that?
Yeah, we're talking 3 millimeters wide, but shoots up to 10 centimeters long. So this is a big one. But wait, they get bigger. So this is one of the few red listed federally protected species of liverworts in Canada. This is Apotroibia nana. See the white things?
Yeah.
Those are giant oil bodies. If a herbivore bites into this, it gets the equivalent of drinking bleach. Very unpleasant reaction. This thing is known all as a genus. This thing, again, look at the distribution: East Asia, Japan, Himalayas. Yeah, I like to do the polar distribution. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know, I can't live with that distortion. So the polar deals with the distortion. So this is a pattern we're seeing again and again here. Pacific Northwest, Japan, Himalayas. We saw it with Takakia, we saw it with some of the lichens, and we'll see it with still more plants. Herbertus, you guys recognize this from the West Coast? Big orange pillows on trees. Well, up there are 3 species of Herbertus in these exceedingly wet areas, 2 of which have no name. They are new to science, but really just a taxonomic mess. So Herbertus, quote, Himalayensis, doesn't have an official name, but based on DNA work, seems to be most closely related to Herbertus from the Himalayas. When we get to the wettest and smallest of plants, that scale bar is 1 millimeter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine how fun it would be looking for that. All of our lives have new purpose, right? But this is Cephalosiella phyllocantha, found only on waterfall spray zones on rock. Known from 3 populations in British Columbia and 1 in Alaska, and that's it. That's it. Up close, what do you see? These spiky, spiky, spiky little leaves, 5 cells wide, 7 cells tall. What a marginal life, right? Makes you feel good makes me feel good about my life. Some of them are just beautiful. This is Plagiochyla gracilis, found in deep canyons in the hypermaritime region. So doubling that. And again, look at this distribution: Pacific Northwest, Aleutian Islands, Japan, Himalayan region, over and over. So Lepidosia, you guys know this one from rotting little cedars around here. Tiny little liverwort. It's called the little hands liverwort. It comes in many forms in these saturated habitats. This is Lepidosia filamentosa. You can see it has pinnate branching. And this is Lepidosia sanvichensis. Any thoughts on that specific epithet, on that name?
It's edible.
That would be fantastic.
It's not-
Yeah, it's from the Sandwich Islands. It grows in Hawaii and here. This needs further investigation, don't you think? Yeah, so my friend Dan and I were so inspired by this, we decided we needed to go to Hawaii and see it. So we went to Hawaii, where it grows. So here's our distribution: Hawaii, coastal BC, a little nook in Alaska. And what do we find? But a memorial cairn to David Douglas, AKA Douglas's fir. Right, the Scottish botanist who did a lot of the early work on the west coast of early botanical work on the west coast of North America, supposedly trampled by a cow there.
Oh.
Yeah, with not known if it's a euphemism. So there's other exotic liverworts, but at this point I'm just beating you over the head with it. This is Mastigophora woodsii. This thing's around 10 centimeters long by 5 centimeters wide. Another anomalous distribution: Himalayas, Scotland, Ireland, British Columbia, northern hepatic mat. Scapania ornithopoides, big, standing up tall, spiky leaves. This thing stands upwards of around 10 centimeters tall along the bog slope. Again, Scotland, Ireland, British Columbia, Hawaii, Himalayas, Japan. And then our last one, we're almost done. This is Coleogenia McCownii. Does the name McCown mean anything to you guys? Yeah. What comes to mind? McCown's meadow foam, right? So John McCown was this early government botanist. He actually worked for the Geological Survey of Canada as their botanist during the border survey, the 49th parallel survey. And he came out, he has these records all over where he seems to just walk off a train and find things that can never be found again. It's a special talent he had. It's augmented by the fact that he's terrible at labeling his specimens. So he'll be like, liverwort found west of Winnipeg, sometime in August, maybe 1884, right? And it's always a bit of a puzzle trying to figure out what, where was this, when was this? So this species, Coleogenia McCownii, was named by Richard Spruce, a famous English botanist who did tons of work in South America in the 1800s. But it was based on this collection that McCown made in Vancouver in 1889 or something. And I've been trying to find this thing for like 5 years. I've really tried to find the original location. So this is what the packet says: Hastings on vine maple, Acer circinatum, April 8, 1889. This is the envelope for the type specimen. I've read his diary from that day. Talks about having stomach problems. His sons have gone off somewhere. He headed east. I found the photo of where he got off the boat. This photo was taken within a year of when he got off the boat. I see a forest over there. I can correlate that forest. That's where the P&E is in Vancouver. Yeah. So it's kind of gone now. The closest thing to it is this is where the Second Narrows Bridge crossing would be over here. And I've been to that area, looked at vine maples, haven't found it. Luckily, I found it everywhere else, along with some friends of mine. We now have it from around 10, 15 localities in coastal British Columbia. And it is the only epiphyllous plant in the Pacific Northwest. The only plant that grows on leaves. And in order to grow on a leaf, that leaf needs to be constantly moist, right? If it doesn't provide that stable habitat, it can't do it. Each one of those leaves is about 1/4 of a millimeter wide. That's growing on western hemlock over a creek on northern Vancouver Island. Cololegunia McCownii. Yeah, well, that wasn't just me. There's lots of people looking for it. I got tutored, and now I can find it. You will find it soon if you would like to waste your life as well. So it takes us to our final question here. Why are bryophytes so abundant and diverse in these exceedingly moist places? So what do you guys think? What do you think? What's going on here? There are about 200 species of flowering plants up on northern Vancouver Island in this bogscape. There's 400 species of bryophytes. In British Columbia, there's about 3,000 species of flowering plants and 1,000 species of bryophytes. So it's turned around. There's twice as many bryophytes in this region, whereas in the rest of the province, there's 3 times as many flowering plants. What's going on?
So if they don't have a root or they don't have a vascular,
No vascular tissues.
if substrate doesn't matter, then they can grow where they want.
You are right on track there. So these are soldiers of fortune in a hostile world. They take in all their nutrients and liquids right through the leaf surface. Beyond them is a hostile environment, right? This acidic groundwater, the low oxygen, lack of nutrient cycling. They don't need any nutrients because it's all happening on the leaf surface. They've got pockets filled with little tiny microorganisms that can fix nitrogen, that can photosynthesize. The nutrient cycling is happening on the surface of the plant. There's an advantage to not having roots in a habitat where the roots meet nothing but bad news. So this is an exception to the rule for bryophytes. Bryophytes are usually show some adaptation to drying out, some adaptation to direct sunlight, but this is where they can be happiest. They don't need any adaptations because they're living in perfect equilibrium with the atmosphere. They're not going to dry out. So plants that in other places on Earth would be completely outcompeted, would not live there at all. Here, they're the only things that can live here because they can get their own nutrients right on the surface. Your misery is over. So I just quickly like to thank the BC Biodiversity Museum, the BC Parks iNaturalist Program, and the Hakai Institute, which lets me sort of get around to interesting places. And then Karen Galinsky at the UBC Herbarium, John Reynolds, Brian Starzomski with the BC Parks iNaturalist Program, Terry Taylor, who many of you might know from the area. He's a small things guru. And my friend Dan helped me get around and see all these things. I put my email address there. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, please.
How do they get enough nutrients?
So could you just repeat the question?
Oh, so the question is, how do they get enough nutrients? So, Again, they live off the goodies of the atmosphere and their surface cells. So literally, things dissolved in rainwater and byproducts of the algae and cyanobacteria that live on their surface. Yeah,
The second question was, they're distributed very widely in these sort of weird little pockets.
yeah.
So how would genetically similar plants then so far apart? Is it
So,
really
yeah, I'm so glad you asked this. So, I call it spore net. Spore net. Bryophyte spores can be dispersed way up into the atmosphere. And they can travel tens of thousands of kilometers. They're ambient. And where they're not ambient, this is something that always is my hook for people who love birds. They travel in the mud on the feet of birds. They travel in the gunk on the feathers of birds. So around 5 years ago, a group from, I want to say the University of Washington, I honestly can't remember, did eDNA screening of spores in the mud of birds' feet. And they found something like 38 species from 1 foot. So when you think about how birds and other animals, be it invertebrates or small mammals, they have particular niches, particular habitats that they visit predictably. In the case of these habitats, sandhill cranes, right? They're all over them. They have an ability to spread the spores where the wind might not always apply. But generally, bryophyte spores travel very far.
They don't have success very many places.
They are
but
our selected species, right? Like it's a numbers game. Every single moss throws out between 1,000 and 500,000 spores from each capsule. Every population of mosses probably can have, thousands of capsules. I mean, they are very much playing a low probability, high numbers game.
They try everywhere and make it somewhere.
Everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lesson to be learned in that. Just keep trying. Just keep trying.
In different places.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So, geologically,
Oh, please.
Vancouver Island supposedly, as I understand it, sort of was out sailing in the Pacific and coming up
Yes.
until it bumped into the continent
Yes.
here.
Yes.
So can you discern that?
In the moss, in the bryophyte signature?
Yeah, or
Well,
in,
so-
in little plants.
I'm so glad you asked this because BC's most famous bryologist was this fellow named Will Schofield. He wrote the first sort of field guide. He was at UBC for 50 years. And he literally proposed that this was a Gondwanan relict that had rafted to British Columbia hundreds of millions of years ago on Vancouver Island, Rangelia, right? The Rangelia terrain is Vancouver Island, Haida Gwaii, and parts of Alaska. And that's precisely where you find this thing.
Is that the one that was seen in Hawaii as well?
This one was not seen in Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Wait, or was? Hold on. No, this one is not in Hawaii. Yeah. So geologically, there aren't many mosses that have the same antiquity of the event of Vancouver Island suturing onto the continent. I mean, we're talking more than 100 million years ago.
And if
Right.
the spores are moving around so fast.
Exactly.
Watch out the signature.
Exactly. But I mean, something to think about is you guys have heard about this Brooks Peninsula,
Yep.
right? The glacial refugia in coastal British Columbia, places that were unglaciated. on the Newity Plateau on northern Vancouver Island, you can see the glacial till. It's tiny, it's about a foot, right? Around Nanaimo, it's about 50 meters in places, right? But up there, it's around a foot. It was glaciated, but it seems to have all the diversity bryologically of the Brooks Peninsula. So whatever's happening in terms of refugia, I don't know if it applies to bryophytes. They get around so easily that 15,000 years is plenty of time for them to establish from existing neighboring populations. Yes,
I thought I heard recently that violence had something to do with enabling plants to come onto the land.
absolutely. Yeah, so when we look at the earliest fossil record, what we actually see are these biofilms. And essentially, they're mixes of microbial communities and fungi. Logically, when you think about coming out of water, right, you have to deal with all these stresses. How to get nutrients, how to avoid desiccation. And the earliest plants, or the earliest things to come out of the water are thought to be almost lichen-like, because lichens provided the protection from desiccation for the algal partner and the nutrient acquisition as well. For an organism that otherwise wouldn't be able to take in nutrients from land, right? Aquatic organisms are just taking it right through their cell membranes. When you get on land, the terrestrial life requires some specialization for nutrient uptake. And you can't, bryophytes have been able to get by with taking it in through the surface, but most land plants early on seemingly would have had these microbial communities helping them in nutrient acquisition. Bryophytes still have microbial communities helping them. They're on the surface. They never developed roots. Does that help at all, or does that just make things worse? Do you find that, like, as you get older, everything's just so connected, it's impossible to ever give a simple answer to anything? Right? And like, I have got these two kids, and one of them's a pure teenager right now, and they see any waffling as a sign of weakness. And I'm like, don't you see, this is careful consideration, but like, face value. It's flip-flopping. Yes.
Randal, are you seeing any relationship between global heating and changes to the this wetlands?
So that is a very good question. My friend Dan is working on his PhD in basically moist maritime fog belts and trying to address that exact question. Will these change with changes in global climate regimes, right? Will moisture belts move? What on a local level, like just informally, these deep canyons and waterfall spray zones, pretty resilient, right? I mean, once those ice caps melt, they're gone. I guess there's that going for it. But the coastal fog belts, deep canyons, they could become their own types of sort of micro refugia for moisture loving organisms. All right.
So, some trees like maple seem to have a ton of moss.
Yeah.
bryophytes on them.
Yeah,
And, so what's going on there?
I'm so glad you asked.
And why do some trees, maybe it's just an old wives' tale, but they will grow moss on a particular aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. So some mosses love the shade, some mosses love the sun, but generally it's the north side of trees where mosses thrive, because most mosses don't like desiccation all the time. In terms of maple bark, remember, bryophytes are taking in all their nutrients through the surface. The liquid is how they interact with their substrate. And each bark has its own chemical characteristic. And the maples and oaks tend to have more neutral bark that is calcium enriched. And because of that, you often see the same bryophytes on limestone as you do on maple or oak. So that bark chemistry, especially the pH, seems to have someone who's more of a physiologist in this room might be able to help me. But it's my understanding that lower pH actually inhibits basic nutrient fluxes across cell walls. So when you have an acidic environment, those nutrient fluxes are retarded. Whereas in a more basic environment, it flows more freely. So it tends to be richer on maple, a relatively more basic bark than on conifers. Does that work?
Yeah, sure.
And you had a question?
No, I don't have a question. I just wanted to tell you what an interesting speaker you are. Only you could have made this interesting.
Oh, that's nice of you to say.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, well, yeah, just seconding that, that's so just wonderful. And I mean, I love mosses and lichens anyway, but now, man, that's great. And I'll be, well, I think many of us will be looking even closer at the little close-ups. Yeah,
And if you
yeah.
find that fern as a true fern, you will be a hero of the West Coast.
Yes.
Can I ask you one last question? Is there like a kind of intro loss ID book?
When are you writing your book?
We're literally working on it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's
so
a
yeah,
group
so the
of-
question was, oh, sorry, just for the Zoom folks, the question was, whoops. Is there a good sort of a starter Moss ID recommendation and Randall's they're working
No,
on
there's
it-
a group
on
of
the
6
book
of
right
us
now,
working on-
6.
But the British Bryological Society has a fantastic introductory field manual to mosses. And Will Schofield wrote one in the 80s that's still very good. We're just trying to kind of update it with things like color. So
Okay, and how does like you know, if you have a decent close-up photo and you put it in iNat, will people like you come to the rescue and say this is what we think
are
it
you
is?
implying that I have identified more than 100,000 mosses?
Yeah. So iNat is kind of an easy out in a sense, or at least.
That's, I use it a lot
Okay,
to identify other people's mosses.
yeah, so there you go, he'll, you put it on iNat and Randall
Our
will ID it for
Zoom
you.
community has said, thank you for such an interesting talk.
Okay. Yeah, that was just wonderful. So just one more round of applause there, Randall. And now we're gonna draw our winner for, maybe we get Randall to pull a name for the for book in the shadow of the condor.
Well, repeat the title of it because I can't remember the exact.
What's it called again? In the shadows of the
I
condor?
brought my glasses so I could read it.
Okay.
It's called The Condor's Shadow.
Okay.
It's subtitle, The Loss and Recovery of Wildlife in America.
And the winner is,
And the
drum
winner
roll.
is, do you want to pick?
Oh,
is that
sure.
right? It's-
Congratulations, 6134.
Woo!
Oh,
There we
yeah.
go, right on.
Thank you so much.
Santa, thank you. Thank you, and I guess we'll say good night to the Zoom crowd.
Okay.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Great talk.
In your name tag, and if you can help